Well, the python problem is getting closer and closer to home here in Central Florida. We told you at 10 how the apex predators are getting closer to our homes here.
They didn't slither in quietly. We opened the door. In the 1980s and 90s, Florida's exotic pet trade exploded, selling baby Burmese pythons to curious families across Miami. They were sleek, patterned, and small enough to coil in a child's palm. But these weren't pets. They were apex predators disguised as novelties. As they grew, fast and enormous, panicked owners dumped them into canals, swamps, or simply let them vanish into the Everglades.
Burmese pythons have devastated native wildlife in the Everglades. Researchers turned to tech, hoping robotic rabbits can lure the snakes out.
Then came Hurricane Andrew in 1992. It tore open reptile breeding facilities, unleashing hundreds more into the wild. The perfect storm had begun, and Florida didn't just lose control. It accidentally created a predator empire. The damage wasn't loud, it was vanishing. Within years, raccoons, possums, rabbits, and even deer began disappearing from entire zones of the Everglades. Some studies showed over 90% population collapse in mammal species. The python wasn't just hunting, it was erasing the food chain. Scavengers vanished, leaving carcasses to rot. Raptors starved. The swamp's very soil began changing. This wasn't balance, it was a quiet, accelerating collapse. Then came the now infamous footage. A python devouring a deer whole, another locked in a fatal coil with an alligator. The message was clear. This wasn't a reptile problem. It was an ecosystem war. When technology stalled, Florida turned to something ancient, a dog's nose. Truman and Eleanor, one a black Labrador, the other a Dutch Shepherd, weren't just trained to track. They were trained to smell the unsmellable. Pythons leave behind a musky scent trail, invisible to humans, but lingering in grass and mud. These dogs could find it in minutes, where trained biologists had failed for weeks. Their success stunned the teams. But success has limits. The Everglades spans 1.5 million acres. 2 dogs? Not enough. They weren't the final solution, but they proved one thing. The snake could be outsniffed. What if the python came to you? That question led scientists to a radical experiment. Live rabbits placed in reinforced pens, trembling in the swamp heat, surrounded by infrared cameras. It worked. Within days, pythons began arriving like magnets. 20 snakes slithered toward a single test site. But the backlash was swift. Footage of terrified prey in cages sparked outrage. Animal welfare groups condemned the trial. Funding vanished. The live bait was gone. But the idea remained. It wasn't the rabbit that lured the predator. It was the scent, the heat, the illusion of vulnerability. So they built one. Not a trap, a decoy designed to fool the most ancient predator instincts on Earth. Each Robo Rabbit was coated in synthetic fur, radiated a body temperature of 99 degrees Fahrenheit, and released a lab-made scent almost identical to marsh rabbit musk. Some even twitched their ears. They weren't just bait. They were bait with cameras, thermal sensors, solar panels, and motion alerts. Cost per unit? $4,000. The plan? Deploy 120 of them across python hotspots and let the predators come to the trap. It wasn't warfare. It was surveillance disguised as prey. On day 3, the system pinged. But the predator wasn't a snake. It was a 12-foot alligator. It charged, jaws open, and crushed the robo-rabbit like it was made of paper. The camera feed cut to black. The decoys had worked a little too well. Not just on pythons, but on gators too. What followed was chaos. Dozens of rabbits were destroyed. Gators began hunting the fake prey. Pythons, sensing danger, started avoiding the zones entirely. The swamp had turned into a predator arms race, and humans had just lit the fuse. The robots were failing, but they were also watching. Each crushed decoy still sent back a payload of data before it died. Thermal logs, motion timestamps, and predator movement patterns, all stored and synced. And when scientists began cross-referencing the footage, something strange appeared. The pythons weren't moving randomly. They were following invisible corridors, slipping between canals and sawgrass trails like trains on hidden tracks. The destruction wasn't a failure. It was surveillance. And it revealed the one thing no one had ever seen before: the python's secret highway system. Then they fed the chaos to a machine, a neural network trained on failure, and fangs. The AI ingested thousands of hours of crushed decoy data, every tongue flick, every false strike, every gator attack, and began building something new. It didn't just see where pythons had been, it predicted where they'd go next. Because it didn't just learn their habits, it learned their fear. The AI figured out that pythons were avoiding areas with alligator scent and heat. It mapped the avoidance patterns and turned them into forecasts. This wasn't machine learning. This was instinct prediction. It wasn't guesswork anymore. With the AI's map, scientists saw it. Interconnected corridors where both pythons and alligators moved in synchronized silence. They weren't just paths. They were predator highways, carved over years of instinctual travel. These ghost routes crisscrossed through shadowy canals and thick sawgrass, far beyond where any hunter had searched before. It was the python's secret playbook. Now it was ours. For the first time, humans had a predictive edge. We weren't chasing shadows anymore. We were stalking them on their own turf. No more waiting in swamps, hoping something slithered by. With the AI's predictions, field teams stopped playing defense. They moved in with precision, intercepting pythons along the hidden routes, cutting off breeding females before they vanished into the brush. The shift was immediate. In 1 month, they captured more pythons than in the entire previous year of bounty hunting. Because now, the hunters weren't searching blindly. They were ambushing predators who thought no one was watching. That wasn't just strategy. That was psychological warfare. And the apex predator just lost the element of surprise. The python's empire wasn't just slithering, it was nesting. Using the AI's movement forecasts, hunters tracked mature females deeper into the glades, past the water lines, into zones no human had ever dared search. What they found was staggering. Hidden nests, dozens of them, filled with coiled giants guarding thousands of eggs. Some nests held over 100 eggs, each one a future predator. This wasn't just population control. This was cutting the head off the invasion. By targeting the breeders, they didn't stop one snake. They stopped generations. Each Robo Rabbit became a sensor node, an artificial nerve in a vast digital brain. When a motion alert pinged, a drone launched. Thermal cameras scanned the terrain. Field teams moved with real-time eyes in the sky. What started as bait had become an integrated surveillance network, combining AI, robotics, aerial scanning, and old-school grit. The Everglades wasn't just reacting anymore. It was watching back. Every movement became data, every encounter a dot on a living heat map. And for the first time, Florida wasn't chasing snakes. It was predicting them. Then came the footage. Pythons slithering toward the decoys and stopping, circling, pausing, retreating. No strikes, no contact, just cold hesitation. The internet exploded. "They're evolving," some cried. "Even snakes outsmart AI," others joked. The myth of the intelligent python was born. And while it spread like wildfire across social media, scientists raised a brow. Because in truth, snakes don't learn like we do. They don't analyze, they react. What looked like hesitation was likely environmental noise, human scent, barometric pressure, or flawed heat signals. The pythons weren't getting smarter, but the illusion had to be perfect, because even instinct can smell a lie. And so, the machines began learning faster. Every failed strike, every slither by, every hesitant flick of a tongue was logged, processed, and analyzed. The decoys didn't just record, they evolved. Heat signatures were fine-tuned, scent emitters upgraded, motion patterns made smoother. The question was no longer, can we fool the snake? It became, can we outlearn it? The predator didn't change. but our tools did. Because in the battle between nature and code, the winner won't be the strongest. It'll be the one that learns faster. And this time, it wasn't the reptile. For the first time in decades, the Everglades had a weapon that worked. Every twitch, every ping, every drone pass built a clearer picture of an invisible enemy. Hunters stopped swinging blind. Scientists stopped guessing. The swamp was still dangerous, but no longer unknowable. They weren't just removing snakes. They were reclaiming territory. And that gave something this war hadn't seen in years: hope. But hope isn't victory, because the truth still slithers beneath the surface. Tens of thousands remain, breeding, moving, watching. And Florida, it's just buying time, because now the snakes are watching too. They've learned our scent, our sounds, our patterns. And while they may not think like us, they've adapted to us. This war was never about brute strength. It's about rhythm, instinct, pattern versus prediction. And in that game, falling one step behind is all it takes to lose. The Robo Rabbits changed the rules. They made the invisible visible. But now, every machine is a target. And the question is no longer how many pythons are left. It's, can we stay ahead before it's too late? Florida's Robotic Rabbit program didn't just lure predators. It exposed patterns no one thought existed. It turned decoys into data and failure into foresight. If this battle proves anything, it's that the war between nature and innovation isn't just coming. It's already here. Subscribe for more stories where instinct meets engineering, and the real monsters aren't always the ones we expect.